So hello everyone. I don't know about you, but I'm getting so bored watching everyone fall for the same tricks of the New World Order over and over again. We've got Trump in the US, we've got Corbyn here, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Are we really that stupid? I think we've got to stop with this hope over experience habit. It's worse than thumb sucking, I think. How about this? Let's put experience over false hope for once. Then I think we'll see what's really going on. It's time to grow up, and growing up means not being afraid to face the truth. Infantile behaviour is what's been going on, which is grasping at every little straw of false hope which they offer us, even though they've kicked us in the teeth over and over and over and over again. We know that these guys will stop at nothing to get what they want, to the extent of vaporizing skyscrapers full of people or downing packed Boeing 777s. They have infiltrated every area of our lives with their agenda. They have lied to us, and they're still lying to us. They steal our money and our children. So why would they not put up false candidates or stalking horses, as they're known, when we know they've done it before? I mean, let's look at it. Let's look at what's really there. Donald Trump is a casino-owning gangster with a very bad comb-over who met with Obama only a week before declaring himself in the Republican campaign. Corbyn, who is accused of helping to cover up child sex abuse in Islington's children's homes, has come from nowhere to say what everyone wants him to say. If it was that easy to get elected, every politician would do it. I have to say, I feel like I'm trapped in the cheap seats of the theatre of the absurd. We've seen it all before, folks. But the show must go on, and on, and on, it seems, until the audience wakes up. So, hello again, everyone. This is Ishtar Babiludinga with episode 2 of the Naked Shaman, and that was my rant of the day. We got off to a surprisingly controversial start last week with episode 1, and so I'm going to try and stay on this bucking horse tonight and see where it goes. I got some good feedback about the last one, and lots of people liked it, although there was one chap who wished I'd done more on Ted Heath's alleged abuse against children and less about the boring shamanism. I thanked him for his feedback, but said the clue to the content is in the title, The Naked Shaman. He did say, though, that I show great promise as a broadcaster. I used to get school reports like that. Well, at 64, if all the promise hasn't come to fruition, it probably never will. These broadcasts, which I'm aiming for them to go out every Tuesday night, will be about the magic of shamanism. And by magic of shamanism, I don't mean the conjuring tricks of the parlour magicians. Real magic to me is alchemy, otherwise known as the great work, the great art. It's about really understanding how the world works instead of just believing how you're told it works. If you know how your car works when it goes wrong, you can take it apart to find the problem and fix it. But if you've always been told that your car is a fish and you believed it, well, when it dies on you, the best you can do is cremate it. It's only when we understand how universal forces really work that we can know how to change anything, which is why we've never been taught it by those in power. But this kind of change begins with inner practice. Real power is available to those who learn how to get their will in line with their power of intention. And once you understand how that works, you'll be able to make great changes in your life, should you wish to do so. But be warned, in the same way that they always say, be careful what you wish for, you need to be careful about what you will into being. So I'm going to come on now to the power of intention, because the power of intention, I think, has been very largely misunderstood, mainly because of this awful movie that came out in the 90s. I think it was called The Secret, and it was about something called the law of attraction. Its problem was it only gave half the story, and it came from a very material point of view as well, and completely missed out the spiritual side of it, which is what fires everything. So it was like, building a building without putting any foundations in, and the thing very quickly collapsed. I mean, let's face it, if The Secret did work, because I know loads of my friends, well, I watched it, and loads of my friends watched it, and we thought it was wonderful at the time. If it had worked, we'd all be living in Malibu beach houses by now. We're obviously not, and things are very different. So something about the Secret doesn't work. So that's why I'm going to explain today a little bit about that, because it's about the absence of will. And if the will is not aligned with the power of intention, then you have a broken trajectory. You have a foot, like an arrow that's broken, so it won't fly. So let's just break it down a little bit. What is the difference between the power of intention and the will? Because the power of intention comes from the conscious mind, and the will comes from the subconscious, which is a mystery to most of us until we start doing shamanic work. And yet it's like the iceberg, that part of it, the unconscious. The iceberg is 7/8 of the iceberg. So that's how powerful the will is. Without the will, you have got nothing. Your power of intention is useless. I mean, anyone that ever knows, the power of intention is that one where, on New Year you make a resolution, and you resolve maybe to give up chocolate. And, by, I don't know, lunchtime you're already into your first bar of dairy milk. So the power of intention comes from the brain that's in your head, let's put it like that. But we've got brains all over the place, not just the one in the head. So unfortunately we've been told that the brain is just in the head. And so we're working just with this thing in the head that wants to be the director of our lives. And so it makes that intention to give up chocolate. But the will has no intention of giving up chocolate because it knows how much it needs and loves chocolate. And it's not going to give that up in a hurry. We have a very strong survival instinct, and I know there are some people who really feel they can't survive without chocolate, so I'm sure they will understand what I'm talking about. So what do we do with the will? Because if the will is in the subconscious, how can we get it aligned to the conscious power of intention? If we don't know, some people call the subconscious the unconscious. It's the same. It's that same whole area of our being that is an unknown land to us. How do we reach that unknown land in order to align our will with our power of intention? And how we do this is by shamanic work, by shamanic journeying. Now, to those of you new to shamanism, I'll explain a little bit about what that means. Where the shaman derives his or her power is from information, guidance and healing that he or she receives from spirits in a parallel dimension. It's a timeless dimension. It's always been there, it always will be there. And so the shaman goes into a kind of trance, which we call a journey, because it feels like going on a journey. You feel like you're moving, you're traveling, you feel like you're traveling through space. Probably in reality or not, but how we see things and perceive things, it's useful for us to feel like we're going somewhere to get the information. So we go into this parallel dimension, which is ever present anyway. And we use various means to do that. And shamans like myself train other people how to do that shamanic journey. And it's most enjoyable, and it's very, very self-empowering, because you're going to be talking to eternal spirits who have the information that you need. And it's more than information in terms of telling you where something is, for example. This information is actually about rebuilding your synapses. So first of all, you need to be able to receive the information. You need to have, I think of the synapses as like having pigeonholes in your brain for information to kind of lodge itself into, like little letters. And we all have these pigeonholes for these different letters of information, data coming in, and we file everything according to which pigeonhole we think it goes in. Unfortunately, most of us haven't got enough pigeonholes to understand, to know how to store the information that the spirits want to give us about our life, our world, and our destiny, why we're here. Very important questions that we're always completely disencouraged from asking. These are the questions we need to be asking if we want to know how our car works and how our car is not a fish, basically. And we get that information from the spirits. It is our birthright to be able to do this. This is not something that only special people can do. There are people that find it easier than others, and some people need more practice than others. But basically this software is inbuilt into us, all of us, and it is our birthright to know this and to be able to work it. By a process of miseducation, we've had this knowledge hidden from us, let's put it like that, and that's why it's called occult, because occult means hidden. So this knowledge of how to operate this software has been hidden from us. And because of that, we're very easily swayed, we're very easily manipulated. We have no idea what our will is most of the time, let alone how to get into contact with it, because we've not been taught how to do so deliberately, in my view. That makes us much better and willing slaves and a much better audience in this theatre of the absurd in which we find ourselves trapped. It means that we will believe everything we're told. We're almost like people that are hypnotised. The analogy of Plato's cave actually is a very good one for this, and I've done an idiot's guide to Plato's cave, and I'll put a link to it at the bottom if you haven't already read that, because it describes exactly what's happening to us at the moment, most of us, who are not in alignment with our will, who don't know how to get into alignment with our will. I think a very good example of the will being out of alignment with the power of intention is what's going on at the moment on our borders. And it's actually how we're being ruled at the moment, because we're not being shown the will. Although sometimes people do say there seems to be a lack of political will. Well, there isn't a lack of political will. The will is going in the opposite direction to the power of intention, the power of stated intention, let's put it like that. So there is a stated intention that we're given that runs entirely in the opposite direction to the direction that the will is going in. And so with to people that don't know about this story, we've currently got, what I think is a refugee problem, but they're not calling it a refugee problem because then they'd have to deal with it differently, correctly, in my view. But, for all these countries that we've gone into and destroyed, we now have refugees from those countries fetching up on our borders and wanting to come in. And it's really, we deserve it for bombing their countries, as far as I'm concerned. We owe these people. We at least need to provide refugee care for them, which doesn't mean letting them come into the country as immigrants. It means actually treating them under the UN Refugee Convention, providing them with proper camps, not the ramshackle shanty towns that they're in, providing them with proper camps, proper food, proper care, proper medical care, until they can go home to their countries, which we have destroyed. So this is what we've got, the problem we've got on our borders at the moment. The problem is being presented to us as migrants, itinerant migrants, who want to come to our country to steal our jobs and steal our women. And I expect there are a few of those too, because there will be people trying to take the opportunity from the crisis to better themselves, to better their situation. There always are people like that who never let a good crisis go to waste. But the underlying cause is that we have refugees that we're not looking after properly. They are trying to get into this country, but because the British people aren't being told that they're refugees, there is this kind of xenophobia that's coming up amongst everybody, this fear, that we're going to be inundated by the ravaging hordes. Actually, there's only a couple of thousand of them. That's neither here nor there, really. I think the powers that be would like us to be inundated by the ravaging hordes because that's their will to break up this country. And that's the will that we're not seeing. There are people at Calais, British people encouraging migrants, refugees, whatever you want to call them, to storm the tunnel and come in. The main group encouraging the migrants and refugees through the tunnel is one called No Borders, and it's funded by multi-trillionaire, multi-zillionaire George Soros, who's probably the richest man in the world right now. And he wants to own the world, and his modus operandi is to break up countries, to break up the power structure in the countries, to change the demographic considerably by flooding the country with immigrants of one kind or another. So that is the will. The will is George Soros's will that we can't see. Well, some of us can see. But then you have the power of intention completely at odds with the will. And the power of intention is represented by David Cameron, our Prime Minister, who stands up and says, yes, we are going to do something about this, and yes, we intend to build a fence to keep these migrants out. And using emotive language as well. I think he used the word swarms, which, put the fear of God in everybody. He has no loyalty to this country. Very few of our politicians do now, unfortunately. His loyalty is to his paymasters, one of whom will be, in one form or another, George Soros. So this is why we have this state of inertia on our borders. The police can't act because the laws won't allow them to act, basically, because the laws are coming from the EU, which wants open borders, basically. Open borders, in my view, are a very bad idea for all sorts of reasons, not least that it's going to make the child trafficking so much easier if they don't even have to stop at a border. But there are lots of other reasons too. I'm a believer in borders, well-policed borders. And if there is a problem that people want to come here from their countries, well, we need to stop causing that problem in their countries. That will solve that problem. And that would get the power of intention in line with the will. The will would then be to stop causing chaos in other countries, to stop bombing countries in Africa just so that you can redraw the geographical lines. Then people would always prefer to stay at home if they're just left in peace, to farm their own land, to fish their own streams, to live their lives in harmony with their surroundings. 9 times out of 10, most people would prefer that. Yes, you're always going to get people that want to travel and go to other places, but they're in the minority normally. You don't get floods of people coming unless there's a crisis somewhere else. So how can the ordinary person get their power of intention in line with their will? They need to practice shamanism. And that's why, going back to the feedback that I got about the first episode about, well, you just need to talk about why the politics need to change and what needs to happen. You don't need to talk about that boring shamanism. Yes, I do, because it's the shamanism that's going to make the change. And just talking about it endlessly on Facebook and Twitter is not going to make the change. Mostly we are preaching to the converted. I know some people like to think they're raising awareness, and they probably are to a certain extent. I'm not taking that away from them, because more and more people are coming onto the internet to find their information and and fewer are listening to what their television set tells them to think. That's true. But still, we're just discussing the problem over and over and over again. Yes, what do we do now then? So we've raised the awareness. We've got people coming onto the internet. We're saying to them, look, this is happening. But what can they do? Because they're still blind to what they need to know. They still have not been able to access their own inner wisdom because we haven't given them the means to do that. And it will only come from shamanism, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there are lots of different names for it. But not ascensionism, by the way, which is a complete psy-op. Most New Age stuff is psy-op, but most of the stuff where you're just actually contacting the spirits in the other worlds other than the astral planes is useful and empowering and actually vital right now. And I really don't understand it when I see other shamans. So this is the importance of shamanism, and I hope that you'll come back for more of these episodes from this ranting woman to learn more. I will be going into much more detail as we go on. For tonight's episode, I'm really just trying to identify the problem for us to start to think about, yes, what is the solution? How can we access the solution? I'm going to put some links at the bottom as well for you to explore further what shamanism actually is. And then you'll soon get why it's important now for people to get into contact with it again. Also, there's my book, The Sacred Sex Rites of Ishtar, which you also will find a lot of really good information in about this kind of self-empowerment from shamanic practices. So thanks very much for listening to this broadcast, and gods and goddesses willing, there will be another one next Tuesday. Until then, love and blessings to all. Thank you.